Taming the High Cost of College, Ep060.
You have kids, they grow up, and before you know it, it's time to plan for college.
Where do you start?
How much is it going to cost?
Will you qualify for financial aid?
Should you be looking into scholarships?
When will you be able to retire?
What about student loans?
The list of questions is never ending. The good news is, all the answers are right here. Welcome to the Taming the High Cost of College podcast. Here is your host, certified financial planner, Brad Baldridge.
Hello, and welcome to Taming the High Cost of College. I'm your host, Brad Baldridge. Today we have a great interview with Steve Schwartz. He is the creator of the College Admissions Toolbox. He also has a podcast out there and a blog. And he provides us a lot of great information about how to tie our extracurricular activities together with our college essay as a way for students to stand out from the crowd and be a little bit different than the typical student. You know, beyond just being the class president or the captain of the football team, what else can students do where maybe that's not a good fit for your student, or if they're looking to do something more or different? Steve gives us a lot of great information, and it's a great interview for families that are trying to figure out what we can do to do better and stand out as we try and pursue some of the higher end schools, or even what we can do if we're looking at just the local state schools or scholarships, where what we do could be a tiebreaker beyond just our test scores and our GPA and some of those very basic things. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into the interview with Steve Schwartz. As always, the show notes are available at our website, tamingthehighcostofcollege/60. Let's get into it. All right, today we're sitting down with Steve Schwartz. He's the host of the College Admissions Toolbox podcast. Welcome, Steve.
Hi, Brad. Glad to be here. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
Yeah, great to have you. So tell us a little bit more about yourself before we jump into your admissions topics here. How did you come to do what you do, and what is it that you do?
Yeah, sure, Brad. So I've actually got quite an interesting story here. I was a high school student. You know, my grades and SAT scores weren't exactly where I wanted them to be, but I was shooting for top tier schools. So I found some really exciting extracurriculars that I'll get into later, wrote a killer essay about them, got great letters of rec about them. And then I ended up getting into Columbia, and I started helping other students with their college essays. So I've been doing that for about 10 years now. And so recently I started the College Admissions Toolbox podcast to kind of, reach out to other folks with compelling stories and expertise in the admissions field. And I've been working as a private admission consultant for about 10 years now, I'd say.
Wow. Okay. So you have a podcast out there called College Admissions Toolbox Podcast. So can you tell us a little bit about some of the topics that you cover there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really runs the gamut. We cover everything from college essays to extracurriculars. We even throw in a little bit of SAT and ACT prep here and there. I talk with a lot of current and former college admissions officers just to kind of get the inside scoop on what's happening behind the scenes. So it's a lot of fun, really interesting hearing how folks got to where they are today and what they have learned working on the inside.
Okay, well, great. So I guess in all that's, the work that you do and so forth, you've become the expert on kind of the admission side of things. And I tend to partner. I do a lot on the financial side. I work with parents. I tend to not work too much with students because, the stuff I'm talking about, tax returns and investing and negotiating with schools and tax planning, that's over most kids' heads. And
yeah, of course.
And quite honestly, you do not want me reading their essays to try and tell if they're good or not. I'm a numbers guy, so that's not in my wheelhouse either. So let's start there. So when you talked about extracurriculars and then tying an essay together, can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, a lot of students are focused on their homework. They're focused on studying for exams and standardized tests like the SAT and ACT. And sometimes they'll just join a bunch of clubs at school just because they want to have some good activities to list on their applications. But the problem with that is simply being a member of an organization isn't really going to impress anyone, you know what I mean? Like, extracurriculars can play a really important role, and they're a great way to set yourself apart. It's hard to be the kid who's the valedictorian who gets the 2,400 on the SAT and then set yourself apart. These top schools have tons of kids who have high numbers, and numbers are just that, numbers. They're not personal. they're not compelling. I really think that storytellers, in a way, kind of rule the world just because they're able to captivate our imaginations. So when you hear someone who is the overachiever with the perfect scores, that might seem kind of boring to you. It's impressive, sure, but you don't necessarily want to hang out with that person or have a conversation with them sometimes. But on the other hand, if you can develop a really impressive, interesting, unique extracurricular activity, that's something that can set yourself apart, something that really no one else at your school has, and that can lead you to ultimately write a winning college essay. So I guess, one question a lot of students might be thinking about, a lot of parents might be thinking about is, how does my kid get that really unique, exciting extracurricular, right?
Right.
I mean,
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, how do you find that? And the thing is that you've got to focus your time on one thing or maybe a couple of things that you really care about and would enjoy doing, even if you knew that colleges wouldn't know you'd done it, because that's not going to make for a compelling story. That's not going to make for a compelling college interview, maybe, or an essay. And I really recommend trying to find extracurriculars that you would truly enjoy that are also outside the box, not necessarily trying to be president of X or Y club by senior year or trying to become captain of the sports team, just because, first of all, there can only be one, and every high school will have something equivalent, right? Every high school has a football team captain. Every high school has a editor-in-chief of the newspaper, and those things are nice to have. They're great, but they're not going to wow anybody. So discovering something that really stands out, I recommend going outside this system. So, for example, let's say you're a student interested in marketing. You might start, the marketing club at your school, but again, that's within this system. I recommend instead, going outside the school universe, if you will, talking with a lot of maybe small entrepreneurs or nonprofits in industries that might interest you, and keep a list of the ones who you might want to work with, and then propose an idea you think they'd like and offer to carry it out for them. If they might say no, but if they do, that's okay. You can try to figure out something else they might want you to do. And if they just don't want you to work with them, that's okay. Maybe they don't want to supervise a high school kid. That's okay. Move on to someone else. And eventually you're going to find someone who lets you kind of take the lead on your own small project. And that's going to give you some real world experience that you wouldn't get in the classroom or in an after school activity.
Right. So, I understand what you're saying, get out there and be a leader and that kind of stuff. But if I'm a parent of a typical kid, and I guess maybe that's the challenge, is a lot of schools are looking for the non-typical kid. But what does the typical kid do who, isn't willing to put themselves out there? And certainly, or what does a parent do if that's their child? They're just not as willing to, stick their neck out and talk to strangers, and they really want to stay in the safety of the high school and that kind of stuff. Is there ways to help our students get over that, or what do you do in that situation?
That's a great question, Brett. I mean, it definitely takes a lot of courage to reach out to adults out there in the real world. One thing, I have two comments on this. The first is I'll say maybe the student could try doing something online. That can be a great way to kind of remove that fear of talking to someone in person. You could send out email blasts and then see, maybe you can work remotely. You can do web stuff. You can work by email. Maybe if you're into computer coding, you could do something there. But if you want to stay inside the high school world, that becomes a little bit tougher in terms of creating that superstar effect. Just because, then you're limited back to, in-school activities, maybe finding an advisor at a high school. You could still, start your own club. That's definitely a way to at least show some initiative, or start some sort of campaign or project within the world of the school, like even just starting something like, starting in-school recycling, for example. I mean, again, it's not going to be the same superstar effect, but it will at least allow you to demonstrate that you do take initiative. You are a leader in some way, or at least an innovator of some kind, someone who's really going to add to the campus community.
Right. So I guess, can you talk to obviously, maybe not obviously, but at the very high end, the Ivy League and the 10 or 15 competitors of theirs, MIT and Caltech and Stanford, the really high-end schools, I mean, they are looking for those true standout kids and I always use the example of musician. They're not looking for the first chair trumpet player because there's, probably 150 first chair trumpet players just in the greater Milwaukee area. Yet Harvard only accepted, 20 people from all of Wisconsin. So it was more than that, obviously, that the people that they accepted. So they're looking for the musician that's, playing with the MSO or involved in a state level competition or something along those lines. So if that's what they're looking for, what happens with, can you kind of talk about the next tier down as far as, maybe we're not quite at that level with our extracurriculars, but what would the Southern Ivies or a Rice or a Boston College or someone that's not quite so competitive, what are they looking for? And
I mean, any college is going to be looking for the best they can get, right? So, I mean, the top tier schools can only take so many students. Not everyone who tries to achieve that kind of superstar wow effect is going to end up doing it. But I think anyone who's simply not working, any student who's doing something outside of an established program is going to make some kind of impact. I mean, unfortunately, college admissions has gotten a lot more competitive in recent years, especially with more people going to college in general and more people applying to American universities from overseas. So I think every college is looking for some sort of indication, that even in the next tier down, they're looking for an indication that the student is going to make some kind of impact both on the campus and then afterwards as well. And the initiative simply comes from not working within an established program. Maybe if you could just indicate one thing that shows you've innovated in some way, created something, started something, reached for some opportunity, that's going to impress them. I mean, you can apply for an internship program, but the problem with that is then you might just simply end up filing papers or doing some kind of office organizational stuff. You're not really going to get to the meat of whatever area you're working in. Like you could go volunteer at the hospital, they'll have you, filing papers. But if you're into science and you reach out to professors, even at your local college, even if you don't achieve some kind of groundbreaking research or work on something super exciting that, Stanford or Caltech, might be wowed by, even just having done that research assistant position or internship with some sort of, a scientist or a science professor at a local university or college, that's still something. That's still indicating interest. And that's something that you weren't forced to do. And then you really did something meaningful that gave you some sort of insights so that when you do want to go pre-med, you at least have something to back it up that suggests you're not going to flunk out of bio or chem the first year.
Right. So can you give us a couple examples of what you've seen out there that kids have done?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I worked with one student a couple of years ago who is kind of weird. Speaking of music, she had a private opera instructor, but a music teacher, but she also was really interested in international affairs. And she'd read something about conflict in the Congo, and she said, that's really awful. And she'd also at the same time she was really into science, and she saw this science article talking about how music can engender empathy in anyone. So she approaches her music teacher and says, listen, I've read about this conflict in the Congo. I want to do something to help. Her music teacher then did a little bit of that outside the box networking and found people who could help this girl form an organization that would put on fundraisers to help people in the Congo to create their own orchestras. Now, that sounds really exciting and sounds really difficult to do, but she didn't actually have to go to the Congo. She didn't actually have to make all those connections herself. She found a couple of adults to help her, form the organization, get the 501c3 nonprofit status, all that difficult legal, technical tax stuff. And this girl could simply focus on, doing what she could within her school, within her community to put on some fundraisers.
Right. So let's brainstorm a little bit. And let's pick on my 12-year-old, and let's say he's now 17, and let's talk about his talents. They are Minecraft and Xbox.
Okay,
And,
that's cool.
and he's, reasonably technical and that kind of stuff. So what might we think about? What might he do as far as, and again, so there's a lot of kids that fall in that category, but.
Yeah, sure. Well, you're saying that he's technical, likes to play video games. That's fine. But is he technical in the sort of way where he might be interested in something related to computer programming?
Yeah, I think so.
So I would definitely recommend that he explore developing skills related to computer programming languages. There's a lot of open source projects that high school students or really, really talented middle school students might be able to take on. But the step before that would be simply learning some computer programming languages, just starting with HTML, CSS, moving up from there. There's a great website called Code Academy. That's CODECADEMY.com. It's like a mix of code and academy. Mm-hmm. And basically, that's self-guided, free online lessons that are interactive and teach students to learn programming languages. They start with the basics, they move their way up. I actually did several of them myself before it got too tough for me, but definitely they're very accessible to anyone. They're free, they're online. And so I'd recommend that your 12-year-old start doing that. It's very gamified and badgified, where students, you get the little green checkbox every time you complete a lesson. And it's strangely motivating. I found myself really wanting to progress to the next step because I got these silly points that meant nothing, but they're still fun. And you get badges, and there's even online discussion forums and boards where you can interact with others doing the same thing. So I'd say start there, develop the interest, and learn some computer programming languages. Then after that, he could contribute to online open source projects in any area that interests him. And he could even maybe work eventually on creating his own simple games and then more complex ones if he likes. Then get into mobile apps from there. There's a lot he can do.
Right. Well, right. But he could also take, as with some of the things that I was thinking about, again, as an example, and help me run with this. But let's say he's also interested in, helping youth or something. So he could say, all right, well, I'm going to set up an Xbox tournament at the local middle school to raise money for charity, or.
Yeah, totally. He could definitely go that route with it too. He could put on fundraisers. He could get together with other kids in his school, in the community, who are into video games. It could definitely organize a tournament of some kind, get local businesses to sponsor it. Definitely. He could also, if he does develop any skills in the computer programming area, he could also tutor kids in the community who maybe don't have access to that.
Right. So he could take, and I guess my point, and I think you've mentioned it, but I want to kind of drive the point home a little bit, is he could take a passion and something that he would be interested in doing and just do it at a higher level than others might do it, and kind of push the envelope a little bit. And it won't it won't seem like work. I think I hear a lot of parents talk about, well, I've got to find my kid something to do so they can put it on their resume.
Oh, for sure. Like I said before, it's definitely, you've got to actually enjoy the activity. The kids, they're not going to put in their 110% if they're just being forced to do it because it looks good for college. Otherwise, you're not really going to have anything compelling to say about it. And you're also not going to go the extra mile that leads you to really stand out.
Right, absolutely.
So this is the sort of thing where if you want to organize an event, or you want to, learn computer programming languages, self-guided on your own, you're not going to go all the way with it at, late at night, early in the morning, on weekends, or whatever, if you don't really want to be doing it. You'd rather be watching TV or just, playing video games for the heck of it. Like, you've really got to be into it enough that you'll be self-motivated.
Right, absolutely. So let's change gears a little bit now, and let's assume that we've got a kid that's doing some of the extracurriculars. That's not the whole application, obviously, so we've got the extracurriculars worked out. Another area that people need to work on would be the letters of recommendation. Can you explain a little bit about what those are about and some strategies that people might use in that area?
Yeah, absolutely, Brad. So the letters of rec are extremely important. All this stuff matters. The grades, the essays, the test scores, letters of rec, extracurriculars, everything, it all matters. And the most recent stuff matters most. So speaking about that with letters of rec, it's best if you can get letters of rec from your teacher's sophomore, junior, senior year, preferably sophomore and junior year, I would say, especially if you're applying early action or early decision, just because senior year teachers won't know you quite as well yet. So you've really got to develop those relationships with your teachers so they truly know you. And that can come from participating in class. But if you're maybe the kid's a little bit shy and doesn't want to speak up in front of others, definitely going to extra help, talking to the teacher one-on-one after school, maybe if necessary, but definitely having those personal interactions and thinking about that early is really important. If the kid just comes to the teacher senior year and says, "Hi, can you write a letter for me?" and the teacher barely had any real interpersonal interaction with them other than like reading their papers and reviewing their exams, it's not going to be the same kind of letter. Same goes with guidance counselors. Some schools have a pretty awful student to guidance counselor ratio, and that really requires going in to have meetings with the guidance counselor, even taking some initiative to have those meetings, just to have the private one-on-one time where they can get to know the student a little bit.
Right. Yeah, when it comes to guidance counselors, I always coach parents a little bit and say, the guidance counselors are really busy. They've got a student sitting in front of them and they got 3 students waiting pretty much at all times. So if you want their attention, you got to get in line and be one of those students waiting. They're not going to wander down the halls looking for kids that seem to be doing fine and pull them aside and say, "So tell me how I can help you." They've got lots of kids that are, vying for their attention. And at a lot of public schools, especially, not only are they dealing with college-bound kids, but they're dealing with, kids that are threatening to drop out and teen pregnancy and drugs in the school and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think talking with students and encouraging them to take that initiative.
Oh, absolutely, Brad. I mean, definitely a lot of the time, the guidance counselors end up focusing on the kids who are at danger of dropping out, the kids who are cutting class. They're not focusing on the kids who are in the middle or even the top performers, because there just isn't always the need. But still, you need that letter of rec. You need them to know you. By the way, I'm sure you know this. When it comes to scholarships, the kids at the higher end, the kids who know the guidance counselors best often tend to get recommended more for those scholarships if they know them in a positive context, of course. So I think it really comes down to even making excuses to meet with them, even if you don't 100% feel a burning need or desire to, just finding some reason to drop by, even if it's about, asking about strategies related to, when to take the PSAT or something simple like that, or thinking about whether to take an advanced placement class or not, or an honors class or not.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So let's tie the letters of rec back in with our projects and that kind of stuff. So do all the letters of rec need to come from school staff, or could we, again, hypothetically, we just did that Xbox tournament at the Boys and Girls Club, and
Sure.
We raised them $1,000, and, a lot of the kids had fun, and it was a successful day. Is that Boys and Girls Club director or whoever a good source for a letter?
Absolutely. I would definitely recommend getting some letters of rec, from the school, of course, from teachers or guidance counselors, but definitely getting from outside the school as well. Someone who supervised the student working on some sort of extracurricular activity can really make for a great letter of rec, because they saw the student taking initiative, doing something they didn't have to do, going outside the school system just a little bit, and they can speak to the student's initiative and determination and problem-solving skills. And that could also be simply, if the student is involved in the newspaper or involved in athletics, even the coach could write a letter of rec potentially.
Okay, absolutely. So what do you feel is the biggest mistakes that parents make in this overall process?
That's a great question, Brad. I think that parents often project onto kids what interests they want the kid to pursue, or what they think the kid should be doing. And it comes back a little bit to what we talked about before, which is the kid's got to be passionate about it, or they're not going to put in the work. So if the parent thinks, my kid has to become a lawyer or a doctor, so I'm going to channel them into, science related stuff or law related stuff, or, history, whatever. If the kids, you can't put a square peg in a round hole, that kind of thing. So I think encouraging the kids to cultivate their interests, and then finding a way to kind of channel those interests down a productive road. So maybe, the playing Minesweeper and Xbox in the privacy of the kid's bedroom is not productive, but organizing a fundraiser at the school, even with other kids too, it could be a collective activity. That can be a great way to channel that down a productive path. The kid will work hard on it, and it'll still look good for college.
Absolutely.
So
Okay.
finding the happy medium.
All right. Now, how involved should parents be in the college process, in your opinion?
That's really going to vary on a case by case basis, based on how much initiative the student is taking or is willing to take, and how capable the student is. I would say honestly, I think that parents definitely have to play an important role, keeping the kids on task, definitely helping them make those difficult decisions, especially when it comes to anything finance related, like paying for college, which is your side of things, of course, but helping them develop, maybe even helping them develop essay ideas, helping them strategize who to ask for letters of recommendation, helping them figure out proper standardized test preparation. I think parents definitely have an important role to play. It's just, you got to make sure that you're not forcing the kid down paths they don't want to go, because if they're stubborn and they refuse, they're going to end up achieving significantly below their potential in the end.
All right. Well, that's been a lot of great information. I appreciate it. But before I let you go, let's do a kind of a quick round. Can you give us 3 or 4 quick tips that might be helpful for parents that are, maybe parents of juniors or seniors and they're in the thick of it, and kind of help them get through the process? Or
Yeah, absolutely. So for parents of seniors, definitely it's getting down to crunch time. So I would definitely recommend asking for letters of recommendation if they haven't already, and starting to work on those essays if they haven't already. When it comes to junior year parents, I would say planning ahead with all of it, looking at all the different components that are going to go into the application, looking at last year's applications, because they're not going to change that much, and starting to think about the different components of them so that you can be ready when application time does roll around.
okay. Any others?
That's pretty much it. The biggest piece of advice I always give is planning ahead, even when it comes to college essay topics. You don't want to be writing them the night before or the week before. The best essays are written over a period of at least a few weeks, so that you have time to review and get some distance from it before coming back.
All right. So I guess let me follow up on that then. When are typically essays going to be due? So if I have a parent of a sophomore or junior, we're starting to learn about the process. When our essays need to be completed by typically?
Well, it's really going to depend on when the college application deadlines are. So it could be November 1st, November 15th, or if you're applying regular, it could be at the end of the year. It really varies based on the college application deadline, but they're due when the application is due. But you want to ideally have it finalized at least a couple of days before, if not a week before.
Right. And that's November of the senior year.
Yes, of the senior year.
Right. So if you've got a junior or sophomore, a lot of students start working on their essays in the summer before their senior year.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that's fine. For parents of sophomores and juniors, it's definitely time to be thinking more about standardized test scores, keeping grades up, cultivating relationships with teachers and guidance counselors who could write those letters of rec, and starting to think about how to create some sort of unique extracurricular if you can.
Right. I guess that's the other important thing to realize is this needs to be well in process in the junior year of high school, because by the senior year, you're writing about it and asking for letters of recommendation about it. So, it needs to come to fruition a little bit earlier in the high school career than senior year.
Yeah, absolutely. The best extracurriculars and relationships with school administrators, are cultivated over a period of time. You can't do it all last minute senior year. It's just not going to be the same.
All right. Well, that was a lot of great information. I know you've got a number of great, helpful things out there, one of them being an essay course. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what it's about and how it works?
Yeah, definitely, Brad. So the essay course is basically a way for students to get some help in composing their college essays without necessarily hiring a one-on-one consultant. So I provide students with writing prompts to kind of jumpstart their essays, templates to structure the essays. I also give them access to a college essay video course, as well as a private community of students to help them through the process. And I also have regular check-ins via webinar, just to kind of keep everyone on track. So I really take students from, no idea of what to write about all the way to the final draft. And it's all self-guided.
Right. Okay. So then who would be the appropriate, so again, late junior, early senior year type people are signing up for this? Or is this something you need more like a year to get complete?
The more time is the better, definitely. But late junior year, early senior year, the summer in between is a great time to get started with the college essay. And that's early enough that you can benefit from the course. You can also benefit from it even if you've only got a little bit of time left before submitting. You can work through it at your own pace.
Right. So I guess what I'm hearing is if you're at a last minute scramble and you need some help, the course can help.
Absolutely.
But you may not want to put yourself in that position, and maybe you want to get involved in the course mid-junior year, early junior year, and give yourself some time to work through the course and do it at a more measured pace that's not quite so stressed out.
Yeah, more relaxed pace is definitely nicer.
Okay. Any other ways that people can get a hold of you or learn more about what you've got going on?
Yeah, absolutely. The best place to find me is collegeadmissionstoolbox.com. Students and parents can also email me at steve@collegeadmissionstoolbox.com. That's the best way to find me.
All right. Well, great. You gave us a lot of great information, and I appreciate it. And we'll put all this information in the show notes for you guys, so you'll have access to it. And thanks for coming on, Steve.
Thanks for having me, Brad.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Thanks. Take care.
The latest tips, tricks, and tools you can use today. This is Brad Recommends on Taming the High Cost of College.
All right, today on Brad Recommends, I'm going to recommend a book that I was just exposed to. It's Putting College to Work, and it's written by Kat Klaus, and it's a great book on kind of the process of college and things that we can do along the way. So there's a section on kind of the pre-college process, but there's also taking advantage of what's available at your college and how to build a resume and how to find a job. There's a lot of wonderful information. I think it's a great book for parents of high school kids to read because I think it helps you take the long view and look ahead to, well, this is the kind of stuff you're going to be doing as you apply and get into college, but also this is the stuff you're going to need to be doing in college and then ultimately when you graduate. So, hints on the alumni networks and the resources at college and all kinds of great stuff that can help a family figure out, again, the kind of more the long view of this is what we're looking into way out in the future. In the end, we'd like a job. So what can we do now as a sophomore or junior in high school to start laying out that process? Because if you start thinking about, I'm going to be relying on the alumni network at some point, maybe to get a job. And I know the Ivy Leagues have a strong alumni network, but what about my local state college? What kind of alumni network are they garnering, and what do they have to offer? Do they have an alumni office that helps with all this kind of stuff? So there's lots of great ideas in this book. I think it's a book that just about any parent should read and encourage their students to read if you can get them to. And certainly the student that, takes ownership of their career path and et cetera. I think there's a lot of great tidbits and hints in here for both the high school student and the college student that also would benefit from this. But I guess another slant, in my opinion, is parents should read it, even if you can't get your students to, so that you can coach them and start asking questions about and maybe nudge them in the various areas that they might need to work on or improve on in order for them to get to their ultimate goal, which is, a career path or a job out of college or whatever it is that is their goal. And they can do it with more intention. In other words, say, I'm going to go do this in college, and the reason I'm doing it is there's benefits like this. And if my goals are different, then maybe I should be doing something different. But again, making a plan and doing things on purpose. So again, that book is Putting College to Work, written by Kat Klaus. We're going to put a link to it right here in the show notes at Taming the High Cost of College /60 if you need to get to it. And we also have an interview with Kat coming up in about a month or so, because I interviewed her and we talk a lot more about the book. So if you're listening to this in December or later of 2015, then there's also a podcast interview out there where I interview Kat and we talk about the book. So if you want to look that up as well, that's another great opportunity. But I highly recommend the book. Go ahead and go check it out. It's available at Barnes & Noble and Amazon, etc. All right, that's all we have for today, so we're going to wrap things up. As always, I appreciate any sort of reviews that you can provide in iTunes. That helps us get found, helps us in the search process, and it also lets people know that we're putting out a quality show. So I would appreciate it if you could go to iTunes or Stitcher or however you receive your podcast and give us a review where you can. Thanks. That's all we have this week. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Taming the High Cost of College podcast. Now it's time for you to take action. Head to tamingthehighcostofcollege.com for show notes, bonus content, and to leave feedback for Brad. The next step on your college journey starts now.
Brad Baldridge is a registered representative of Cambridge Investment Research and an investment advisor representative of Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, a registered investment advisor. Securities are offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer and member of FINRA and SIPC. Brad owns two companies, Baldridge Wealth Management and Baldridge College Solutions. The Baldridge companies are not affiliated with Cambridge Investment Research.